from verified providers, the code, the messaging, the information. All of that has been given into the hands of the people to be able to deliver what's needed in real time. And so, yeah, that's sort of what happened with with the hackathon. It grew to over 250 volunteers, coding, marketing, graphics, daily signups from physicians around the world. And we had the great fortune of you folks at Ocean Protocol, SingularityNet, the leaders in decentralized AI, collaborate together on this, and we couldn't be more excited.
Wow, thank you. I have a bunch of questions. Should we wait for Roger? Is here, right?
I'm back.
Yeah, he's
okay. Back. You're back. Amazing. What was Roger going to talk about?
He's going to talk about decentralization and what's going on the front lines right now.
Yeah, there was two major aspects to Dr. Mohammed said. Kudos for him to talk about federated learning. We think that the healthcare field is potentially at a situation where we're able to solve the privacy issue and combine that with machine learning and artificial intelligence. And from my specialization, we've been trying to push that further and further into the RL world. So we're very happy that you talked about the topic of federated learning. One of the things that federated learning had offered us is the ability to keep data local, right? So where the world is centralizing the data in big center stores, federated learning allows us to have learning models on local to individual computers, mobile phones, and so forth. And so the models train, they learn the particular labels, they learn diagnosis, and from our perspective, they even learn right up to actions, right? Prescriptions, managements, and so forth like that. And all of the weights on the models those are really the only things that are actually transferred to Optin and back up to mingle with the weights of models from different individual phones. And so one of the experiences that we had, and not everybody experiences this, particularly healthcare, physicians that are typically the last adopters of technology. But I had the luxury of working and training with a lot of the libraries out there that do this kind of work. And the idea of higher amounts of CPU and higher amounts of data, that experience really was magnified when we saw the models work. So that was number one in that field, and that became a breakthrough. And it was a breakthrough in 2 points, in that you don't necessarily need individual privacy protected personal healthcare information to make the models work. You just need the weights of the models, and you can average them out. The second thing is the decentralization part, and that was the last thing for me to learn. And it was what Raymond's been telling me about pretty much for 3 years in a row. But I learned that during this pandemic. This has been the going joke. It took a pandemic to figure it out, right? It took a pandemic for healthcare to change, and healthcare has really changed overnight. And one of the things that we've learned, one of the experience that I experienced with decentralization is that, the example was really the simple equipment that we really needed to stay safe. But if we waited for policy to work, the problem with that was that potentially days would go by, and in a pandemic, days is pretty much equivalent to tens of thousands, if not more, of people, depending on where you are on the curve, right?
Yeah.
So it dawned on me from a special friend of mine that had people that had worked with industrial level suppliers that were willing to donate, right? And in fact, that's actually occurring pretty much all over the country, particularly New York, is people want to donate. But how do you get it into the system, right? You can't, if policy won't buy in, then you can't get it in from the usual pathways, the usual tracks. So it dawned on me that if you went the other route, right, the decentralized route, where you're basically allowing access at the level of your colleagues, your friends, your loved ones, your staff, then there is no friction there. And that was the biggest realization moment of my life, which was that's the reason why blockchain, the decentralized networks really, really work, is because they're permissionless, right? That idea of permissionless was incredible. And so when you tie in both of those themes, right, what the incredible group of developers are working on right now, and what Anthropinion wants to work on as well, is the single vision that if we can decentralize an algorithm that deals with and learns in real time, right? It is the only way to beat an unknown virus that is both lethal and spreads incredibly rapidly, killing incredible numbers of people. Because what's the traditional way of doing it? The traditional way of doing it is a typical, NIH-sponsored, randomized, controlled trial, multi-centered, that would take years for us to first consent the patients, not to mention design the first draft of actually how to do it. It just won't work. The reason why we typically do it that way is what we really needed to know is we needed to know an experimental arm and a control arm, right? We needed to know the cause and effect and kind of get away from just associations. The powerful thing about RL and the powerful thing about ML is that because all of the parameters are there, and you can use far more parameters than what a single physician typically has with their repertoire of their brain, then you already fulfilled Hill's criteria, right? You fulfilled a lot of the criteria of cause and effect. And it just gets down to just incredible specific data. And if you multiply that out with large populations and so forth, and as it learns over time, you really get down to potentially prediction. And if you're using RL, right down to the actions, potentially treatment paradigms that work incredibly well. Now, it's not to say that the models would work right out of the gate. Actually, we took a concept out of Tesla, Elon Musk's company, called shadow mode. We're using the same thing where physicians just watch. This hasn't been implemented yet, but it's coming, which is that the physicians watch the different choices of what the algorithms pick as optimal choices. And just like most RL games out there, how you really prove them is not really by their accuracy, right? Because their accuracy can fool you. You have to look at what they're actually doing. And that's what physicians do great. Physicians actually just watch and teach. We do this every single day on the wards with our nurses, our residents, and medical students. And the moment that the algorithm achieves a certain threshold of clinical safety, then we know, most of us will know that that's actually ready to go live.
Wouldn't you describe that as a reinforcement learning mechanism?
Yeah, so cardiology is a lot of people that are not in medicine view medicine as kind of messy, and it can be. Certain things can be. I'm a cardiologist, so as a cardiologist, we make things pretty clean. We have American Heart Association guidelines that really guide the treatment of something like something as lethal and dangerous as a heart attack to really 3 primary actions, right? You can think of them as actions. We think of it as treatments, but you can think of it as actions in the RL world. The agent or the physician, right, can do either no treatment, they can also do medical management, or they can do an intervention. And that's really about it. Those are 3 things. And what is the input, right? The input is really everything that we see. The moment we sit down in our notes, the notes become an input. The EKG becomes an input. The electrocardiogram has very unique findings that represent a heart attack. And the ultrasound images are sometimes available. They may not necessarily be available. They can be available from previous studies, but they all inform us, right? Physicians take one look at it, and within a second, we know that there's heart disease. So we know what the risk of the patients moving forward actually is. So if we could do it, the RL algorithm will eventually be able to figure out how to do it.
Now, I want to summarize an important point there, and on this whole decentralization theme is that when do we know that there's an issue, right? Our frontline workers, so daily, I'm getting DMs from healthcare workers, friends of friends and colleagues that work at institutions in New York where I trained, of folks dying, right? Folks on the front line passing, being intubated, or receiving intensive care treatment. And they are requesting donations, and they are short on PPE. And when an institution denies such and someone that is close to us, near and dear to us, receives a box of N95 masks at the doorstep, right? That's sort of like the light on humanity shines through there when that actually works. And that's bringing the solution to the people, right? Not relying on a central authority to pass down those solutions. And so, what we realized, whether you're using RL algorithms to deliver it, or a supervised learning model to deliver it, the numbers themselves one of the directors at the Center for Infection and Disease Research at the University of Minnesota, Dr. Osterholm, has been following these numbers, these metrics for months now. And he's documenting case fatality rates. He's looking at the numerator. He's looking at the denominator, and all of his, for lack of a better word, predictions have come true to date. Even prior to the WHO claiming that this was a pandemic, he had already written about it publicly. And essentially, to extrapolate his analysis and his data further, and let's all hope he's wrong. Really, let's hope that he's not correct in this. But some 50% of the population is going to be infected. Now, as we know, with the case fatality rate, if you look at the literature, somewhere between a 1.38%. As the denominator increases and they're doing a lot more testing, that number looks to go down. But we also know that the cases of fatalities aren't all being reported. Maybe 5 or 6 a day in certain areas are not reported as such. And so when you have that sheer number of infected and severe cases, that's a frightening statistic, so to speak. And so one of the things to look at then, and folks often ask, well, where is this heading? Where are we going in the United States or in Canada, so on and so forth. And a lot of that depends on what are called comorbidities. And so, things like myocarditis, acute respiratory distress syndrome, secondary bacterial pneumonias. But what we're seeing in New York and the data that's coming out of there, associated risk factors are folks with end-stage renal disease, some 700,000 individuals living with that. Obesity, folks, age 29 to 55, some 45% of folks are estimated to be categorized in that particular, diagnosis, and smokers. And so we actually don't know how this is going to play out in our neck of the woods here in America, in Canada. And so I think the best that we can do is to keep the knowledge and the experience moving freely and quickly with no impediments. And so, if we were to look at even just some of these long-term care facilities out here, we have, these are some of the most under-recognized and ill-equipped establishments in many parts of the world, these long-term care facilities. And so, the folks that are caring for our elderly, our grandparents, right? How are they adapting and coping with this? And how is the information getting to them, right? What we know is that the electronic medical record systems and our traditional healthcare system does not have the infrastructure to disseminate that knowledge. They simply don't. I mean, most of these long-term care facilities don't even have computer systems. I mean, they're still on binders and paper. What we do know is that all of those providers, virtually all of them, have a mobile phone, a smartphone. And so, we had a question come in to ASCO 19 to our frontline providers, which was as simple as, how do you sanitize your phone? And should we? And, there were no guidelines on that. But we had many medical opinions on that. And that's better than nothing to get that out as folks are moving in and out of these long-term care facilities. And so to be able to assimilate that knowledge, distribute it quickly, with, the question there is, how slow do you want that knowledge to move, right? Do you want that to move at the speed of policy? No, it's all based on speed of implementation, right? And so we want that to move quickly and freely. And so the next step is what Roger was alluding to, is can we get those call them what you will, sound bites, advice, opinions, can we aggregate those en masse now with the help of our communities, our AI, RL communities? And the last bit that I would add to that, which is important, and it really segues off of Dr. Mohammed's talk, is that at this time now we have the ability to timestamp and verify knowledge, right, on an immutable ledger, the blockchain, for example, in a censorship-resistant way that, as Roger mentioned, is borderless, permissionless, right? We have that technology now. We didn't have that before, and with that, there's no reason that we shouldn't. So we have internet native money now. Folks know what cryptocurrency is and internet native money. Why is there not, an internet native healthcare, internet native clinic, internet native medical knowledge, that's trained, accessible, and functions as a healthcare system or a doctor truly without borders, with ubiquitous access? And so what we've kind of done, sort of just by chance, is search far and wide for the world's most, call them compassionate healers, led by coders and physicians alike, right? And the movement basically has grown to you guys and this webinar, and that's kind of where we're at right now.
A quick question, just out of curiosity. Do you think it's a question of misaligned incentives rather than more of regulation that's preventing this from happening, as in like collaboration of, say in the US, you have insurance providers who have a
that's a great question. It's a very complex system, and no one person I would ever say is at fault here. What you'll find is that the CDC, I got to give them credit. Just as an example, a couple weeks ago, the CDC changed their guidelines and said, okay, we recommend all healthcare workers to wear an N95 mask when available, but when not available, you can wear a surgical mask. Okay? And so what many institutions interpreted that to mean was, oh, we can wear a surgical mask. Right? But that's not what that means, right? So, these N95 masks that were produced they're very specifically made, right? I mean, the air protection, right? Not just droplet protection.
Yeah.
But when an institution interprets that as saying, oh yeah, all surgical masks now, well, what that is it's kind of like playing a telephone, where the message, the information, as it's traveling down that pipeline, kind of like changes, right? And that's why it's so important for this to be peer-to-peer.
Yeah.
Because you can't have those middlemen constantly, while they intend to do right, and the message was clear, right? And surgical mask is better than no mask, right?
Yeah, I gotta agree with Raymond there. It's a complicated system, and it's an organization, and it's actually multiple organizations, and every different organizations have different values, different principles. I've been to two different types of organizations: private institutions that are for profit, that Dr. Mohammed is kind of alluding to. I've also been to institutions where I'm at right now, which are nonprofit, which are very principled towards supporting charity and providing free care, sorts like that. And then a lot of these institutions are also affiliated with religion and with religious principles and cultures. And so with all of those different things, it was apparent to me when I was dealing with the pandemic and the lackage of instruments that would help me, guide me, and keep me safe in the institution while treating my patients, right, is that that once you understood decentralization, once you get that experience, I really call it an experience, you realize that all of that upper stuff with the baggage of incentive misalignments, you don't have to worry about them anymore. That's the beautiful thing about decentralization, is once you go peer-to-peer, then the options are all available. And what people love is really the ability to choose for themselves, right? And here, People know they're at risk. I mean, right now, as we speak, until Raymond just mentioned there, um, without the formal hospital policy, right, nobody was doing what I'm doing. That has changed, but it changed today. That's late, right? So people understand that there are risks, and a lot of the times people take their own risks. But what the decentralization process allows, and once you understand it and practice it, is that you have options. You have an option to come in and do what I'm doing to protect yourself, or you don't have to, or you could potentially follow other sources of information and instructions.
Wonderful. If I could ask a question specific to, let's say, your current F1 for ASCO 19, is there a way for the community that's going to, come to life, and hopefully we can sustain it long term through COVID-a-thon to either add features, make it more robust or more decentralized? Because at least personally, I think it would be really valuable if we don't constantly reinvent the wheel. That's a tendency in hackathons. This COVID-a-thon is not a normal hackathon. Maybe it's even an incubathon, like incubator hackathon. But what are the ways that we could help you guys and make it grow? Or if there are ideas in your community that you haven't started yet, could we focus on those?
Yeah, definitely. You want to take that, or you want me to take that one?
Yeah, I'll start first a little bit. This hackathon is the group that came together here has, I think, answered a call to action, in a very unified way, in a very compassionate way. There are people there that are working around the clock, volunteering hours into it, and it have turned out an amazing, an absolutely amazing product, an amazing front end with a back end that works very seamlessly in a continuous integration development cycle, something I've never seen before. Most of the hackathons I've been to before in the past has been really individual teams that have developed their own projects, and it's very fruitful. Over 2 weeks, you do get somewhere with it, but you don't have the go live type experience that this hackathon and our community has brought together. So Sudhirth J. Nair is one of our back-end lead developers. He has really really tweaked and optimized a CI/CD process where what makes this really unique is, and in fact makes it unique across the spectrum of both development as well as healthcare, is that in contrast to what we're doing in the hackathon, healthcare is usually where you get only answers and inputs from certain individuals, and in fact, very rare individuals. They may get a paper out of it, and whether that paper becomes applied or not, that's to be seen by opinion and authority. But here, every developer that does a pull request and a merge request comes down the pipeline through the CI/CD process and goes to several developers actually, and that compare and contrast the code. And as long as the code actually works pretty well and it does what it's supposed to do, is actually launched right into production. It goes to a testing bed, and then from a testing bed to the production app, right to the front end, and it comes onto my phone. It comes onto my phone as a physician, as a patient, as a user, and then to my patients. I can actually give it to my patients. And that's why this thing is incredibly powerful, because it reaches at the level of the users, of the patients, from the developers who are actually young, incredible thinkers, fast movers, and hard workers. And they have churned out some incredible features where they're able to take information from frontline physicians in China, Italy, different parts of the world, because we're actually translating with translators. We take all that information, and when we first built this thing, we wanted it for us here in Washington, right? Because we knew it was coming. We knew that the surge was going to hit us, and it was going to hit us really, really hard. Fortunately for us, it hasn't. It's been a little bit slower than we thought, which is really nice, but it did show up. It showed up in New York. And the good news is that this app has actually been global, and the information has been spreading as fast as we possibly can. And so what we hope to be able to do with it is that now that the United States has, or the United States has cases, we can now go from state to state, where people from New York on the front lines can document problems and questions that they had and answers that they had from the field, so that states that are about to get hit, like Washington and Florida and Georgia, can actually ask into the database, type right into the search bar, and get a direct answer. And if there are no answers in the database, it gets logged as a question for verified physicians to go after and answer those questions with literature and data.
Mm-hmm. By the way, I hope everyone's fine that we're going over time, maybe up to half an hour.
No, sorry about that.
No, I mean, we're really grateful.
Here, right?
But I do want to touch base on one thing, though. So the long-term trajectory is our goal. So Ray, did you want to talk a little bit about our long-term vision?
Yeah, am I live, by the way? Can you guys hear me?
You're live.
Yes.
All right. And you guys can see me as well? Great.
Yes.
Great. That's perfect. Yeah, so, from like I mentioned earlier, it's not often that you get two technological enablers converge on itself in an era where we can actually do something about it and the world actually needs it. So we have AL, ML, RL, it's working. We have blockchain, it's live, and it's permissionless code. It's unstoppable code, in fact, and that's working. And so the ability to be able to merge that in real time with a compassionate community and being able to see the effects, of the lives that it's saving, it's important, and it's also very inspiring. We see it on the front lines. The location where I practice, we typically trail, cases and case reports where Roger practices in the U.S. And so we watch everything they're doing. The way that they're doing isolation in hospital systems, the way that they're using treatment, and the whole thing, the whole 9 yards. And so we've prepared for a wave up here in Canada, all across the board, right? From clearing out hospital systems to making available beds, to testing sites, drive-through sites. And that is simply the result of real-time information sharing. And so, to be able to take a platform that does that and have it get better over time, and each physician has their own, machine learning algorithm, or let's just take, ASCO 19, where the answers get better and better over time, crowdsourced amongst verified providers on the front lines, and getting the messaging clear that everybody's voice matters in this, right? If you see something that doesn't look right, point it out, right? If you want to contribute an ad, it's open source. Dive in there, do something. If you think it needs to be done, do it, right? I mean, now is not the time, in a pandemic is not the time to be deliberating. Now is the time to take action, and that's what we've seen our community do. And I think we're enormously grateful for that.
I was thinking it might not be a bad idea to do another webinar with your community managers and people who are merging the code and pressing the launch button. I think we will have some people from Nth Opinion joining our Discord channel, so that would be great to collaborate and learn from your experience. Maybe your approach could be something that we could also adopt, that instead of having like 200 tiny submissions, we could form teams around major ideas. And a question that I had was, like, could you look at your current efforts or or the app that you released as also like a platform? Could people from COVIDathon maybe use the data and come up with other front ends or other use cases of the same data?
Yeah, I'll let Roger address that. For the data, we have a relatively active AI ML data scientist group in there. So, thoughts, Roger?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I think the data is free and open source. All of the data is logged into a Azure backend at the moment, but there's no reason why it can't be anywhere else. And we're actually looking forward to the integration, right? A lot of things that we have heard about with blockchain being immutable, what we would love to be able to do is to have this system, this a really advanced user interface developed by the community of developers from all the way from front end, back end coders, full stack coders, right up to marketing, PR, branding, and in fact, with contributions from the medical community, we have MAs, PAs, and advanced nurse practitioners in there, all contributing to this UI, because what they want to be able to do is they want to take this thing as practical as it possibly can be, as easy as it can be, and I think that data is very, very valuable. It needs to be what the platform is supposed to do is become continuously expanding and even improving its own relevance over time. What I would love to be able to see is the Singularity Net type solutions, where they're able to bring it into a decentralized protocol and have those RL agents act on it from all angles. And we should do it fast. One of the things that Ray just talked about there is a guiding theme for our entire community. Is if you think about it, that we need it. We need to implement it now. We can always debate about it later.
Yeah. And I want to segue on that. I know we're running up on time, and there was a question here that's been upvoted several times. What are the main characteristics of sovereign health, and what are the main challenges? And I think this is a good time to segue into that. As we sort of tie into blockchain, is that there is source code. Folks have developed the blockchain related technologies that haven't yet been implemented into the live production. And so when you look at that question of, what are the tenets of sovereign health and what are the challenges? The challenge is actually mindset, right? So sovereign health is essentially a vision where you can donate your data to a cause that's near and dear to you, right? Whether that's breast cancer research, COVID-19 aftermath, or a platform, where the monetization Dr. Mohammed talked about surveillance capitalism, where the monetization of any data is first and foremost your right by default. You, the patient, you, the user. There's no fine print, there's no subclauses, it's your data. And so the decentralization of medical research, clinical trials, side effects, the phase 4, which is called surveillance, approval of medications, efficacies, and all of this ultimately leads to more personalized medicine in which you have the keys to your data. And I can't take credit for this, although it is modified. It's not your keys, not your data. So the mindset is to take back ownership of your data, because nobody else will. And I would say that you folks are all familiar with the trilemma, where you're trying to achieve decentralization at the same time as scaling, at the same time as security. You can't have the best of all worlds all the time, and so you really got to pick and choose. Well, the decentralization aspect, first and foremost, where folks can actually donate and gain from their own data in an easy way and contribute it to projects like COVID-19, is something that we would love to see as a feature build out. And we're happy to provide original source code, a compilation of source code rather from the community as an open source project, and move that forward.
Got it. That's a great way maybe to wrap up. I think we have a lot of things to talk about, but I guess we have to end it somewhere. Really enjoyed talking. I think we are just us. I think Roger left. He can actually join, but I and Nicholas, moderators, we want to continue with a little bit of team building activity. So you guys feel free to go. We're really grateful for you being with us, and we'll experiment with this team building activity after this. So the idea is people can just come to the screen, present what they want to do, and if they get enough likes or upvotes, then we just create a Discord channel for them, and we'll make sure to highlight. There is a link to your GitHub right now, and then there's also a channel on Discord on their calls to action for Nth opinion. And I hope your community managers will be there to interact with people from COVID-a-thon. So we'll definitely highlight it. Thanks to you guys, and for the participants, please stick around a little bit. I'll invite Nicholas so we can try the team building.
Okay. Thanks so much, guys.
Appreciate your time. Appreciate you guys.
Yeah.
Join
Also,
the
thanks
community.
So we can actually already start this. Let me invite Nicholas here. So what I'm asking is if anyone here has an idea and is looking for teammates, please just post a question under Ask a Question. So I'll look at you, and then I can bring you to screen. You have about 1 minute to present. So let's go. I'm just clearing the questions and answers area. Just to ask a question here down there, if you see ask a question, and then I'll bring you to screen. You can talk if you feel comfortable presenting. Nicholas, you can also join me on screen if you want. Guess we're waiting for for team leads and people who have ideas. Maybe we can. You're on mute. Oh, unmute you, Nicholas. So this is not the only way to create your teams. We have a couple of channels on Discord, and we'll use a couple of different ways to help people find each other. We also have at least 20, more than 20, about 30 mentors already. We'll have more, and we'll help teams to first form, get some education through these webinars, and then work on the projects in the 2 months of the incubathon hackathon. So I'm not getting any questions. Oh, I got one. Which one is the project that made a map with, that is, thank you, Andrea. So I think you're talking about the contact tracing app called SafePath. So I'll answer you here. Nicholas, can you read the second question?
Of course. I wrote the Singularity Net simulation, which is a multi-agent system of intelligent agents. I'm interested in applying it to multi-agent reinforcement learning. Mm-hmm. I would like to learn more about RL, vision. Probably you have any projects related to this. Mm-hmm. Do we have any projects related to this?
I think the best way to help Deborah would be if you are on our Discord channel. Let me actually just share a link. If you are on our Discord and you go to the N's opinion channel, if that's where you're interested to apply it, they would be happy to work with you. They have some of their community managers there. Right. So let's wait a little bit, see if there are any people, you know, it's very informal. If you have ideas that you think you want to build a team around, just come to the screen and pitch your idea for 1 minute.
Yep. Also, just a quick reminder that tomorrow at 8:30, we will be doing this again, this time an introduction to split learning. And yes, if you enjoyed tonight's webinar, please come back tomorrow. Also, this will be connected with the COVID-a-thon, also related to the main topics of what we are also exploring in the hackathon. So while we wait.
I'm sharing our Discord link in case some people are not there. This is very interesting. So thanks to Deborah, we answered your question. Thank you. Well, I guess this spontaneous team building is not working, but it's fine.
No worries.
I think everyone enjoyed. Oh, we have questions. I have an idea that was born during the German hackathon.
Wir versus Virus.
Okay, Robin, you want to come on screen? I think the answer is yes. Let's invite Robin.
You can invite him, and if he doesn't want to come on screen, he can say no.
Oh, interesting. So let's have Robin for a minute or two, hear what Robin's idea is. You should be able to join us now on screen.
If you want.
I think he wants.
Only time will tell.
Does it work? Yeah, okay.
Yes, yes.
Hey.
Yeah, so my idea is, the problem about my idea is that it will be out of competition because I'm also at the event. So yeah. But anyways, I applied for this grant from Germany, or like they do an enabler after the hackathon to build the apps that were part of the hackathon. So there were 42,000 people, and our idea was in the top 150. So we can now continue on this, and one of the guys in our team is actually working on the app already. And the main idea is to create an app that will actually collect data in a privacy-preserving manner from all around the world. So everybody can then cough for some time into their smartphone. So because the researchers have found out that this is very significant, how your lung is functioning. So then we can collect this data, and you can also measure your temperature. You can answer a lot of background questions about yourself. And then all of this will be collected in a privacy-preserving manner. And we do this over time. So everybody around the world can start collecting the data for themselves, and they can kind of create a health profile for themselves. So over time, I don't know how long this will continue, maybe 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, nobody knows. But basically everybody will have their own health profile. And if they would get infected at some point, they would then also be able to share this with the hospital. They can say, okay, this is my personal health history. So I have this for myself, and we are going to only collect this data and then share it with the researchers around the world, and basically allow them to build machine learning models on top of it. So that in a way, if we don't have so much infected people, okay, maybe you can all make a model that says, okay, you're very healthy, you're okay, you know, and then, for example, this cough of Nima, it could say, okay, Nima, if you coughs like this, that's all right, it's not a problem, you know. But if we have like 20 million, 1 billion people actually using this app, then suddenly we can generate the data very quickly. And we can offer this to everybody around the world. And yeah, the German government is giving grants out, and they're providing infrastructure. And I have like 1 or 2 people that are already working on this. But of course, it would be great to have more people joining.
Got it, got it. So we're using the...
Yeah.
Sorry, you...
Continue, Nima. Continue.
No, so we're using the call to action feature. So if people are interested in this idea, either joining or just to continue chatting about this, you can click on join this team on Discord. It takes you directly to the team channel that I just created for, I'm calling it Cough AI app. You know what would be interesting if Zoom...
There's a name already. It's called Call for Cuffs. So
you can change it. You can change it. So call for cuffs. So I think this could be one of the major ideas that we rally around. I think you could get the data from many places. You could even imagine Zoom anonymizing the data and just sharing it with the right privacy measures. So it's like Zoom has now 200 million daily active users, up from 10 million a few months ago. And imagine something like this running in background.
You could do something like when you log in, you're asked to do certain tasks. You know, if you want to use Zoom, you have to do this and this and this. And this automatically feeds into the system. It generates that. I mean, all of this is not really complicated. I mean, it's not I don't know. I don't think it's a really very sophisticated thing, but I mean, the question is just how to set this up in a privacy-preserving manner. And I think we have great partners here in the hackathon that can probably help us out. But yeah, and in the end, then we can open source the data set, and next people can come, researchers can come. I know at Carnegie Mellon University there's already an app which is called Voice Detector app. Already is working in this direction, but they don't actually collect so much information. So they are working on the background in research, but we want to do this part of collection.
Okay. So I gather we do not have that many people who are comfortable yet to share ideas or join teams. Still, thank you to everyone. This is recorded, so if you go to the same link, I think you'll be able to watch the recording, and you can also share clips on social media. So last words, please join us tomorrow, same time, with some open-ended, maybe a new approach to team building.
Or a second try for the old approach.
Or a second try, yeah. So I'm also in touch with the Metacartel Hackathon people. We're doing knowledge sharing to see what works best. So thanks for staying around for, is it 2 hours? 1.5 hours? And
1 hour, 40 minutes.
Wow, okay, amazing. So see you all and more tomorrow. We have over 100 people registered. See you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Until tomorrow.